Oromo Voice Radio English program. Oromo Voice Radio is broadcasting to Oromia at 16-meter band or 17,850 kilohertz or on oromovoice.org website. OVR broadcasts Oromia Insight program every Monday for 15 minutes at 7:15 p.m. Oromia local time. Welcome to Oromia Insight program.
Welcome to Oromia Insight. My name is Ali Jalata. This is part 2 interview with Professor Asafa Jalata. Last week, we covered who is Oromo, what is Oromo question, what motivates Professor Asafa Jalata to write about Oromo and Oromummaa, what is the difference between Oromo and Oromummaa and which one is come first, what the benefit of Oromummaa, and the theorization of Oromummaa in 5 levels. Today we look at the days of millions of Oromos, the Oromo leadership, the competitive advantage colonial states like Ethiopia have, and there's the destruction of independent Oromo leadership. The Ethiopian colonialists have caused the physical days of millions in the further attempt to introduce social and cultural days to the Oromo by suppressing their basic Oromummaa and by preventing them from developing Oromo nationalism. For how long this will continue and what can be done?
The Ethiopian colonialists have worked on many levels to destroy Oromo peoplehood or nationhood. Let me mention a few of them. First, they have killed knowledgeable Oromo who have resisted Ethiopian colonialism. As history demonstrates, they reduced Oromo people from 10 million to 5 million during colonialism, but still the successive Ethiopian regimes have been killing prominent Oromos, knowledgeable Oromos, people who know Oromo culture, people who have self-respect. These colonialists used terrorism and genocide in killing millions of Oromos. They are still doing that. Second, they have destroyed Oromo cultural, political, economic, and religious institutions to suppress basic Oromummaa. Mind you, not only national Oromummaa, they want to eliminate the manifestation of Oromoness, basic Oromummaa. These destructions have involved mental genocide. Consequently, many Oromo elites have become political robots to implement Ethiopian colonial policies in Oromia. Today, OPDO and other Oromo political organizations that have relationship with the Tigray government are living examples. The TPLF and other Ethiopian organizations are focused on destroying national Oromummaa, Oromo nationalism. That is why they are targeting to uproot the Maccaat Ulama Association, the Oromo Liberation Front, from Oromo society. These organizations were created by far-sighted, conscious people who have national Oromummaa. They want to destroy any independent Oromo organization that attempts to work for the Oromo society, so that they can create and maintain dependent leadership that can take marching order from Habashas, either from Amaras or Tigrays. So the suppression of basic Oromummaa and national Oromummaa will continue until we be victorious by defeating Ethiopian colonialism and establishing our democratic state. So without establishing our state, without defeating our enemies, the enemy will continue to suppress our all forms of our nationalism.
Oromo Study Association produced knowledge. Why is the Oromo Study Association unable to hold its annual conference in Oromia?
As you know, OSA has been created and developed in North America by the struggle of Oromo diaspora, people who recognized the problem of the Oromo people, who started to build an independent intellectual institution for Oromo society. So, as I already mentioned, independent institutions, whether they are political or economic or social and cultural, are not allowed to function in Ethiopia. Ethiopian colonialists only allow dependent, collaborative organizations to function in Oromia. So OSA could not hold its annual conference in Oromia because Oromia is a colony of Ethiopia. Since there is no academic freedom in Oromia, in Ethiopia, intellectual forces such as OSA cannot freely produce knowledge and disseminate in Ethiopia. So these kind of organizations are not tolerated. Ethiopia has been an empire of ignorance and poverty. It doesn't tolerate intellectual freedom and the freedom of association. So if OSAC totally will not be allowed to hold its power until the Ethiopian colonial state is controlling Oromia. But they are trying to send their messengers to infiltrate OSA so that they can take OSA to Oromia. They try their best by sending Ethiopianists, people who have no idea what is going on, who just want to get money by selling OSA as a product. We can sense that since recently, as you know, in diaspora, the Ethiopian colonial state or the Tigray state tried to undermine the struggle of Oromo in diaspora.
How a few Oromo nationalists transformed the consciousness of the Oromo people who had been reduced to a collection of so-called tribes and the raw material by the Ethiopian colonial state as the global supporters.
A few Oromo nationalists who came together from all over Oromia in the 1960s and 1970s had transformed the consciousness of the Oromo people, at least a few educated elements. Ethiopian colonial rulers, as we know, segmented Oromo identity into colonial regions, clan families, religious groups. These rulers made Oromo, the Oromo people, collection of the so-called tribes and raw material to make Ethiopian people from the Oromo. The Oromo have been used as firewood to build Ethiopia, not as equal partners, not as citizens. So Oromo nationalists, by building organizations such as the Machat Ulama associations and engaging in armed struggle like the Bale Oromo armed struggle and the cultural renaissance like Arfan Kallo in Eastern Oromia, initiated modern Oromo nationalism. And the Ethiopian government didn't tolerate this. So it used all necessary mechanisms and warfare to destroy these institutions. Even it invited powerful countries like Great Britain, the United States to support in order to suppress the Oromo armed struggle in Valley. And the birds of the suppression, these suppressions of Oromo forces didn't stop the development of Oromo nationalism, the continuation of Oromo national movement. Consequently, the birds of the oil left in the 1970s and the starting of protracted guerrilla armed struggle had further laid the foundation of Oromo nationalism. All these efforts raised the political consciousness of some Oromo and led to the restoration of the Oromo name and Oromia to a limited degree. There have been some achievements in the Oromo struggle, although the total objective of the Oromo people are not yet realized, and it will take some time to be realized.
How in the why Ethiopian colonial institution prevents the Oromo nation from exercising its own agency, denying it economic opportunity, political freedom, social and political power, but unable to prevent the development of Oromummaa in the form of language, national culture, ideology, identity in Oromia and beyond?
As I have already explained, Ethiopian colonial institutions have prevented the Oromo nation from exercising its own agency. That means to make a decision about themselves and to implement. The destruction of Oromo institutions has aborted an Oromo agency. Oromo were reduced to tools of the enemy. They have been prevented from making decisions that would affect their lives. However, the Ethiopian colonial system could not crash and control the minds of intelligent Oromo. The Oromo people have produced many intelligent people who cannot be easily crushed, who cannot abandon the aspiration of the Oromo struggle for liberation. Consequently, the system has failed to prevent the development of Oromummaa. It has slowed the development of Oromummaa, but it couldn't crush or it couldn't prevent the development of national Oromummaa in the form of language, national culture, ideology, and identity in Oromia and beyond. The Oromo people, whether they are in Oromia or in foreign countries, they have continued to intensify their struggle, despite the fact that many Oromos, many intelligent Oromos have been assassinated, killed, tortured, sterilized, buried alive, and many Oromos have been impoverished. Their lands and resources have been taken away. All these crimes against humanity couldn't prevent intelligent Oromos from struggling for their national aspiration.
You said building Oromo national leadership and organizational capacity require ideological clarity, resource mobilization in form of money, human capital and knowledge, critical understanding of objective and the subjective condition, and the liberation knowledge in order to facilitate the development of cognitive liberation among the Oromo. Do you think the Oromo in short supply?
Still, the Oromo have deficit in building Oromo national leadership. As a result, there is a lack of ideological clarity, and there are still Oromo who confuse Oromummaa and Ethiopianism. And you cannot take the identity of your colonizers. There are many Oromos who are taking the identity of their colonizers. Consequently, their thinking, their understanding of the Oromo struggle is very shallow or distorted. The Oromo national movement has not yet adequately mobilized Oromo economic and human resources. It has not yet also fully developed liberation knowledge to critically analyze the objective and the subjective condition of the Oromo struggle in order to raise the political consciousness of the Oromo people. Therefore, it requires a lot of work to have a strong national leadership, a strong organization, a strong liberation army. So it requires a lot of efforts that all nationalities should recognize and mobilize their resources toward these goals.
What competitive advantage colonial states like Ethiopia have to produce false and biased knowledge in the theory in order to neutralize and justify all form of inequality and injustice, compared to national movements like OLF and ONLF have struggled to expose and discredit such knowledge by producing alternative narratives?
The Ethiopian colonial state has competitive advantage in producing false or biased knowledge and theories in order to neutralize and justify all forms of inequality, because it controls domestic and international economic resources, institutions, cultural capital, and the skills and the knowledge. Even it controls Oromo resources, Oromo human and economic resources. So, you know, under this kind of situation, this kind of criminal government has advantage, comparative advantage. Liberation fronts such as the Oromo Liberation Front and the Ogaden National Liberation Front are run by determined volunteers who are dedicated to dismantle the Ethiopian colonial system. Their numbers are limited. Their support comes from a few nationalists. They don't have domestic and international support. Despite these difficulties, they have exposed and discredited the knowledge for domination and exploitation by producing an alternative ideology and alternative narratives. The Tigray government only survives by using gun and international support. It doesn't have domestic legitimacy. This shows that these two liberation movements and other liberation movements like the Sidama, Anuak liberation movement, they have really demonstrated that they have legitimacy from their respective people. But the colonial government survives by lies, by producing lies and propagandas, and by getting international support, by looting the resources of the people, by selling their land, by selling their children to Arabs, by doing all means to get money and to buy guns and to control people. So it lost its competitivity, it lost its legitimacy despite the fact that it has competitive advantage.
This interview will continue next week. Next week, Oromo leadership. What kind of leaders Oromo need now? Do you think Oromo have what it takes to be free soon? Don't miss it.